There's another Star Wars game?
What are we at now? 2, 3, 4?
Is it 4? Hey guys.
Hi.
Welcome to another Lords of War Games and Hobbies video. I'm Chris, this is Jay, and we do these types of videos twice, maybe 3 times a week this week. And we're feeling spicy, there's a bonus video. Yeah. And we're doing something a little different this time. We're going to answer one of our members' questions. And if you want your questions answered, you want us to make a video, the best way to guarantee that is to go on Patreon and support us. And you can do that for as little as $3 a month. So today we're going to do a little market update. Market update. Need like a crazy graphic for that or something. Are you some sort of graphic person?
Not really, no.
I'm not either. So that's everybody who works here. So
maybe it'll be just a piece of paper.
Yeah,
you know.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, next time
go with our shill hats or whatever.
Shill hats. Yeah.
So Atomic Mass Games produces. That's basically the company that Asmodee created to basically house all their miniature game studios all under one roof, essentially. So you have X-Wing, Armada, which is, I don't know, is that still even a real game? Legion, and your new 2 plastic games, Shatterpoint and Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Yeah. So So it also, if you haven't known or whatever, a lot of these were born, or the studio was taken over from when they procured Fantasy Flight games.
Yeah, that's right.
So I only mention that because you could argue there's some relevance there if you have the same people running that and maybe how they want to go about it. And I don't know if Asmodee's changed anything, but historically speaking, Fantasy Flight would make cool games, but they wouldn't make them forever. They would kind of were like, we're going to make games and then make new games.
Yeah, there's this sort of like, there's almost like a clock attached to these games where they sort of, and you know what? It's hard to argue with that business model. I really, it creates sour sort of like customer vibes, but I think you do get to the point, like, and you've seen it with games like X-Wing, where like, is it their fault that X-Wing collapsed? You could argue it is, but you could also say, well, at some point with a universe, you run out of things to make that are cool and exciting to buy, and the range of models becomes so big and unwieldy that it's very difficult to balance. That at some point you're just like, we just need to start over again. And companies like Games Workshop will be like, that's when they blow up and they go do a new edition. Well, they tried that with X-Wing. People got mad because ultimately, like, the dials and the cost of restarting is higher. Yeah,
that was the tricky thing. Yeah, because they went with pre-done models, and it was the dials and the cards that were like the rule books and the things, and then so you had to sell new dials and new cards, and you add another layer where it's actually collectible cards because only certain cards come in certain model
sets,
kits.
That's right. Yeah,
and the model kits are sold out, or they made low numbers of them anyway.
So you have this tradition, almost we could call it that, of sort of like a game cycle or a life cycle for a game. Very prominent in their living card games, especially. They would last for a certain amount of time and then retire, and then they'd come out with new ones. And while we haven't actually seen any of these games retire officially yet, it's very easy to see games like, maybe not X-Wing, but Armada has kind of like been on the death spiral for a while. Like, people are like, you go online and people are like, is this game dead? Like, have they announced that it's dead?
It came and it died more than once too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So to keep this video not from being super long and blabby about like the state of all these games and giving the histories of how they've progressed over the years.
What's up now? I guess.
What's going on now? Like, what are you seeing in most hobby shops on the wall right now today? Well, Marvel Crisis Protocol and Shatterpoint, I want to say, are probably in most hobby shops. They don't necessarily occupy a lot of space. For us, we pretty much carry everything.
Robust.
We have a pretty big Marvel selection, especially. And Legion, I think, has seen a decline in the last year and a half in hobby shops. Like, I know a few that have kind of started to not carry as much of it and clear it out. We've had issues with its sales, definitely, especially since Shatterpoint came out. So
Imperial Assault was the other. Never mind.
Right? Yeah, that's already well into So I think the people are, and I think here's the thing: Atomic Mass customers I think one thing I've noticed, and this is not a mark against you because I'm one of these. I bought Marvel models. I bought X-Wing models before.
Sure.
I've owned a ton of these things. The Atomic Mass customer, I don't think really exists like Games Workshop customer. Like or the Infinity customer. Like I've seen people that buy things for Atomic Mass seem a little more transient, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I think that has to do with the intellectual property.
Yeah.
It has a bit to do with like Star Wars is fun to buy when you're excited about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Marvel is fun to buy when you're excited about Marvel.
Yeah.
But those feelings don't necessarily like last long, like some of the sustained, like, you know, I'm really into the 40K universe. That doesn't really like diminish necessarily over time. Mm-hmm. But like Marvel just released like 3 bad movies in a row, and now I'm not feeling Marvel right now, so I'm kind of into something else.
Yeah.
It just like ebbs and flows. I've noticed that they're a lot more susceptible to those things.
Well, you have this literal thing where it's weird. It's Games Workshop can keep making new Space Marine captions, and it doesn't seem to matter. But if Atomic Mass makes a 3rd version of a Spider-Man, he's just, unless his rules are good, people are going to be like, I already have Spider-Man.
Yeah.
They're just not going to bite on it the same way. And maybe this, like you said, is because of the oversaturation of the movies and the, you know, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been interfaced.
Look, when Infinity War was out,
sure,
we were slinging Marvel kits. Like it was wild. We were ripping like 15, 20s of things.
But there's also something to be said, and all these IPs have this slight problem, including Marvel. You have your like S tier characters that everyone wants and wants to have on their shelf.
And now we're talking about rules. We're talking about like
just models. Your Wolverines, your Iron Mans, your Captain Americas, Hulks, and then you have your everything else.
Beta Ray Bill,
or
not a knock against him, just
you know, what's a fringe Star Wars? I don't know.
Venom Gwen Venom. You know? Squirrel Girl, or Miss Marvel or something. I don't know, like something really. And so. Yeah, when you already we've watched it happen. You get in. That's the cycle we're in. You know, where we start getting releases for like characters that like. I'm this person because I was not a comic guy. I'm not a Star Wars guy. So my knowledge of like all those things is just like a little bit of cartoons, some of the movies. Yeah. I'm the guy sitting there being like the person next to me who's like a big comic book head's like, oh, I already know what's gonna happen. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like I'm like, it's so fresh for me, and they're like, you know. Yeah.
So especially when it comes to like Star Wars things, like I really like there's releases, but I'm like, I have no idea what this is. It'll be some guy in a Mandalorian armor or some, you know, and then someone else would be like, don't you know this? They'll chew me out. And and I'm like, well, this is the problem is I'm like, you know, there's a lot more people like me which are like, I don't know who or what this is. And so they're not interested in buying it. And even some of the, I know Shatterpoint has a lot of stuff from like the cartoon shows and things like that. And they'll have, you know, random characters with lightsabers. I'm like, I've never seen this in my life. I have no idea. So I just imagine how many people roll in that's the reason these companies, the reason they went for these IPs is because it's so recognizable, and that you can get the what do you call it, the casual person who just, you know, maybe just watched the original trilogy or something and they want to play with their kids. You know, they're going to be looking for the Lukes and the Vaders and the Stormtroopers and whatever, and the Yodas. I think that's most people that care about, and then only a few people, and then so.
But yeah, I think just a quick my market update on Shatterpoint would be it was largely a bit of a flop in this last year, and just not despite the efforts and the miniatures and the game. Quality's incredible. The game's really fun. I think it's like great. I just think it's like just another Star Wars game stacked on the bodies of a lot of Star Wars games.
Well, I can summarize it in one anecdote, and that was someone at one of our long-standing customers. I was like, "Oh, are you interested in the thing? Because I know you have like all of this stuff, like Legion, etc." And he's like, he looked at them all. I think he grabbed it was 2 of the same thing. It was either like, I don't know, maybe it was Luke and 2 Lukes or something. He's like, I already owned Luke and Legion.
Yeah.
And this one's just slightly bigger.
It's attempting to draw. So. Ultimately, it's attempting to draw on a nostalgia or a feeling that has already been tapped into a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So there are diminishing returns there. I think that's ultimately what it is, right? With that being said, like we still carry it. I'd say every new release has like some turnover, so it is selling. And Atomic Mass Games had a big showing at Adepticon again this year. There's lots of people playing their games, obviously.
Yep.
Marvel, I was a bit more concerned about up until this is actually ultimately, I think, a major issue with Atomic Mass Studios or games is that I get the feeling that despite having an umbrella of games that they're responsible for, they don't necessarily have the staff stretched out to tackle things all at the same time like Games Workshop does. So like, this is comparing, David to the Goliath in size, but like, having a Necromunda release come out doesn't slow down 40K. Right? Whereas when they were pumping all these Shatterpoint kits out last year, Marvel got nothing for like 9 months.
You're letting it just...
And we've talked about this in our videos before, is I don't feel good about this, but the way things are now is if a game doesn't have new releases, it dies.
It's not good.
It starts to die, right? Because people's mentality go that way, right? Immediately, like...
Oh, yeah. They come in and they're like, what's going on with this thing? And you're like, well, there's nothing new. And, a few people are playing it, but then... The other thing is a lot of people who play any miniature game play other miniature games these days. It's very rare to have a guy or a person who's just
pretty
like,
rare,
I only play this.
Yeah.
And so they're, maybe they're dusting off their old world army or whatever, or playing whatever new game is out. And so they're just like, well, I'll come back to Marvel when there's something new and exciting.
Or maybe they don't, right? Like that's the thing, right? Is the second that's ultimately what these companies are dealing with. There's so much cross competition.
It's also the problem of things they don't have to, but maybe they do. But it's always tied to what's on TV or in the movies.
Yeah.
So there's this long delay with X-Men.
So right now,
they had to wait for this new cartoon show to come out.
Exactly. So like this is the dichotomy or the problem with these sort of IPs is they're trying to time these releases. Now the X-Men release is phenomenal. But it was too late. Like they waited so long.
Yeah.
And the new X-Men cartoon is awesome. It knocks it out of the park, and it's getting people to buy models again. But I just don't think that they can ever do that again. Like have this huge, long period where they're not releasing anything.
All the games, they get to pick a few games, and they all need to get something every quarter.
Yep.
You can't go these like.
You can't just turn something off, turn something on for 9 months, and then switch it around.
Yeah.
You're causing a lot of long-term damage to your brand and your games. I think that way, and I hope they learn that lesson. I think.
So.
Yeah, so I'd say Shatterpoint and Marvel are kind of like. They're not games we're looking at getting rid of right now, but they're not some of the healthier games in the shop.
Yeah.
And I can tell you just from the conversations I have with other shop owners that we're not alone in that. And I do worry about Legion lasting that much longer. I know they are starting to put stuff out again for it, but it does feel maybe a little too late. And ultimately, like if it's not their number one Star Wars game, then they're not going to give it the attention it probably needed, right? Yeah. So, what do you guys think? What is your local hobby shop doing with these games? What do you see? Are you playing any of these Atomic Mass Games products? Put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And as always, thanks for watching. And give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.